Hi everybody, my name is Cameron and today we're going to be looking at biodiversity and the ecosystem. Specifically, the human population explosion, the pollution and deforestation of our world, food security, global warming and biomass. So let's look at the human population explosion. Okay, so when it comes to the amount of individuals that the world or an ecosystem can sustainably have, okay, it's known as the carrying capacity. Okay, now the carrying capacity for humans is, I think, something like 500 million. Okay, maximum. Okay, that's the amount where how we currently are as humans as well. That's how much humans the world would be able to sustain. Okay, when it comes to um, our needs and requirements from the world, like deforestation, like how much carbon emissions we put out, the carrying capacity would be 500 million. Okay. Now, it didn't really get to that point for millions and millions of years. Okay. Because of disease, because of predators, because of conflict with one another. Okay. And only recently, since the Industrial Revolution, has our population exponentially risen. I couldn't say quadrupled, I couldn't say quintillion. It has literally exploded. Okay. And the effect that this has is that we are deforesting the world and we are, mining vast quarries for our rocks. We are pumping so much pollution, so much gases into the air, as well as the amount of waste that we produce, non-biodegradable waste. Okay. Now, all of these factors have a huge impact on the biodiversity of Earth. Okay. Now let's cover what is biodiversity. Biodiversity is the range of different species within an ecosystem. Okay. The more biodiverse an ecosystem, the less of an impact will occur if one of those species is taken out. So, humans being humans, we have been leading to the extinction of many, many animals within the last couple of years. I mean, within our lifetimes, really, within the human lifetime, really. But the less biodiverse we make this world, the more of an impact it's going to have when these species start going extinct. You see? So this is how the human explosion is affecting the world's biodiversity. So let's look at the type of ways that humans are polluting the world. The first is land pollution. Okay, so the amount of waste that humans produce could be processed by the world if it was more spread out, if we were more spread out across the land. But the issue is most of our waste is produced in concentrated areas such as cities, and this leads to us having these waste dumps. Okay, now these waste dumps can leach toxic chemicals into the environment as well as chemicals from farming. Okay, so again, those farming chemicals wouldn't have as much of an effect if they weren't so concentrated in specific areas, which leads to entire areas being almost sterilized. Okay, so these farming chemicals could be stuff from fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, which are then going to be washed off of the crop when it rains or the crop's watered and leached into the environment, killing the environment around the crop. So not only the land that the crop's on, but everything around it as well. Now, when it comes to those chemicals that are leached into the water system, it can lead to water pollution. Okay, so specifically, fertilizers are made up of nitrates. This is what plants need to grow. Now, when those nitrates enter a water system, the plants in the water system are going to grow and their populations are going to increase, specifically algae. Algae are then going to lead to something called algal bloom. This is when algae's populations will explode and cover the entire water system, cover the entire lake with algae. Okay, this is obviously going to not allow sunlight through, and all plants at the bottom of the lake that would usually get sunlight are going to die. This is going to lead to them decaying a lot of carbon dioxide is going to be released, and this is going to basically kill any life within that lake because there is no oxygen being produced and a lot of carbon dioxide being released from that decaying matter. The other toxic chemicals that are from farmlands can also accumulate in living organisms. Okay, so you can find fish in these freshwater rivers with high levels of lead or mercury within them because of the leaching of these chemicals from factories or farms. The other way that humans pollute the world is through air pollution. Okay, now what is air pollution exactly? Normally we would know it as smoke in the air, okay, which is true. So a lot of the time when we burn our fossil fuels, they're going to release these solid particles in the air. Okay, now these solid particles can wreak havoc on our lungs and our cardiovascular system to an extent that some countries will have to stay indoors sometimes because the air outside is too polluted. It is too smoggy, it's too full of smoke and these solid particles, which will lead to people having asthma attacks that have never had asthma in their lives, as their lungs are being overstimulated, their lungs are overreacting, or not even overreacting, reacting to all these solid particles that are now being inhaled. Okay. Smoke is when smoke and chemicals are going to hang around major cities. So you'll probably find that a lot of the time, due to something called an urban bubble, I think it was, the heat from the concrete and the buildings is going to make the smoke rise, but then it's going to be trapped in this little bubble. You see that? And that's going to lead to smog. Okay. Now the other way that we pollute the air that people don't really think about is acid rain. So when we burn our fossil fuels, sometimes they're going to contain sulfurs, okay, such as sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. These are going to lead to acid rain, okay, when it mixes with the clouds in the air. Okay, this rain is then going to fall on the earth, okay, and this can damage leaves, plants. It can be very poisonous for animals, so if it gets a large amounts in rivers, it can poison fish as the pH is going to increase too much. And yes, this can also affect countries that might not even have much pollution, as it is carried by the wind. So let's look at deforestation. The reason for deforestation by mankind is usually to make way for cropland, to grow our staple foods such as wheat, soy, rice, okay, as well as to rear cattle. So cattle need land for grazing, or they need land to grow hay or to grow animal feed. And another reason is to grow crops for biofuels such as sugarcane and maize. Okay. Now what this will lead to is a total increase in CO2, and from every angle, okay, because it's obviously less photosynthesis is occurring. This deforested area is going to lead to decay, as the trimmings of the plants, if it's not cleared away, is going to decay, which will increase CO2. And this will lead to an increased amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay. It's also going to lead to a loss of habitat, which will then decrease biodiversity, as trees and forests are shelter for many, many animals. We also have peat bogs. Now, peat bogs are highly acidic swamps almost, and these swamps have undecayed matter in them. Okay. Now, what this means is that decayed matter is a great carbon storage, okay, as well as being able to be used as fertilizer for plants, as that will then be broken down in that aerobic, less acidic environment of your garden into nutrients for your plants. Okay, but these peat bogs are being destroyed to make way for industrialization of an area. So deforestation as well as pollution is going to lead to an increase in something called greenhouse gases. Now these greenhouse gases are going to be trapping the sun's energy that would normally reflect off the earth and bounce into space. This entrapment of the energy is going to heat up our atmosphere and lead to an overall increase in the world's temperature. This will lead to, again, a loss in habitat, okay, due to flooding, as the icebergs are going to be melting a lot quicker. It's going to lead to changes in distribution of species. Okay, so species are going to be migrating differently now due to the warmer climates of their winter areas, okay, or their summer areas rather. Changes in migration pattern, as we said, and reduced biodiversity due to extinction. So there's many animals that cannot live at slightly higher temperatures. Okay, and if they could, they would have evolved to over time, but at the rate that global warming is occurring, they wouldn't be able to adapt quick enough, leading to mass extinctions. Okay, so the impact of change. So there is different types of environmental changes. The first is seasonal, so this is the natural change of temperature, the amount of rainfall, the hours of daylight we have, which obviously controls the amount of photosynthesis that happens during different seasons. Geographical changes such as soil structure, the pH, the altitude, the water salinity, okay, as well as human interactions. So obviously the negative interactions that cause environmental changes are global warming, acid rain, pollution, mining activities, deforestation, okay. But then there are also some positives such as maintaining rainforests, reducing pollution and soil pH, as well as conservation methods such as regrowing coral reefs. Okay, this is something that humans have a positive impact on. So what are some ways that humans can maintain biodiversity instead of destroying it? Well, the first is breeding programs for endangered species, where we are going to take them in, restore the endangered species levels, and then let them back out into the wild, okay, to increase their numbers almost artificially. Also, natural habitats need to be then restored, okay, so that these endangered species will be able to sustainably live on and carry on without human interaction. That's the point. We can't be releasing lots of endangered species into the wild over and over and over. It's not sustainable, okay. Another one is protection and regeneration of rare habitats, okay, so that's something like coral reefs and mangroves, okay, as well as becoming more protected to prevent further degradation and safeguarding. So there's many lawsuits going on in the rainforests in South America with indigenous tribes that are fighting deforestation through these mining or fighting these mining companies that are deforesting large amounts of the Amazon rainforest. Okay, so that's the preservation that we're talking about. A reduction of deforestation and CO2 emissions. So obviously if we decrease the amounts of CO2 emissions that we have, maybe making cleaner fuels, cleaner sources of energy and electricity generation, okay, this would obviously help with biodiversity. And recycling resources, so the reducing of the amount of dump sites, okay, because as I said before, those chemicals are going to leach out into the environment. Food waste is going to lead to a large amount of decay, okay, that decay is going to increase CO2 emissions, and yeah, okay, so these are some ways that we can increase biodiversity or maintain it at least. So when we look at the trophic levels and their biomass, okay, we know that the trophic levels consist of your producers, primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. Sometimes you're also going to get the quaternary consumers at the very top. Okay. Now, when we look at the biomass of the organisms on each level, we're going to be calculating the dry mass. Okay, so when all the water is taken out of the organism, because that water is not going to be really making up its mass, right? The water comes and goes, it changes, but we want to look at its dry mass. Something like a jellyfish is also 95% water, so it would be unfair to count the water as its biomass when your other organisms that eat it, like a turtle, let's say, wouldn't have as much water, okay? So as you can see here, it's usually a pyramid shape, okay? And that's because some of the biomass is going to be passed as waste, so not all of it is going to be used, especially in your producers, okay? So a large percentage of the matter that a primary consumer will eat will be passed off as waste, okay? We can also have, as you're going up the trophic levels, your secondary and your tertiary consumers don't eat their entire primary consumer, okay? They will either just eat the meat or if they eat the bones, they're going to excrete those bones. Okay, and as we know, biomass consists mainly of carbon. Okay, we are carbon-based life forms on this planet, and so carbon is going to be lost in respiration. So during respiration, we produce carbon dioxide. That is where most of your biomass and where most of your weight loss is actually going. Is we breathing out our mass that we eat, which is crazy. So what are some factors that will affect food security of the world? Well, the first one would be an increasing birth rate, obviously. More people is going to increase the demand for food. Okay, the next would be a changing diet in developed countries. Okay, so the highest demanders of food in the world are going to be your developed countries. Countries where they want a large choice and a large variety of different foods. Okay, so if certain countries were to all of a sudden go on a keto diet or a meat-based diet or a gluten-free diet, it will change the supply of food across the world. Okay, new pests and pathogens, obviously. So if a crop gets wiped out by a certain pest, okay, this is going to affect the food security. Environmental changes. So droughts and floods, okay, floods are going to wipe out entire crops as well as droughts in certain areas. This is also then due to climate change. So as your seasons are going to vary, your crops need to be able to keep up with that. Maybe go a bit longer without water or be able to withstand huge downpours all of a sudden. Okay. Costs of agriculture, so farming is not cheap. And the market is going to be controlled by those that sell the seed, those that sell the equipment needed, labor. Okay, so a big issue happened in the UK recently where they had no laborers to pick their fruits or their vegetables. I think it was specifically peppers. So yeah, it's one thing to grow your crop, but if you have no laborers to harvest it, the crop's going to go to waste. Okay. And then conflict, of course. Okay, so racial tensions as well as resource scarcity can lead to conflict in the world, which will thus prevent the supply to these first world countries. Okay, so what are some ways that we can help with the food security of the world? Okay, so the first would be the food chain in food production. Okay, so a lot of the times animals are fed, these livestock animals are fed other animals. Okay, this can be as bone meal, it can be as, yeah, it's mainly bone meal and the leftover bits of the animals that are then ground up into the feed to increase the amounts of protein, okay, that our livestock animals are getting. But this does decrease the biomass of the organism before it gets to us, okay, because in some countries they might not be able to afford or to have the land available to feed these livestock animals, okay, to grow the crops necessary, so they must feed them other animals. Okay, artificially managed food production. Okay, so this is kind of terrible. This is like limiting the movements of the animal. It's basically and also controlling the temperature so that as little biomass is lost as possible. Okay, so basically what they want to do and what they do, especially with chickens and cows, is they just put them in pens or cage, and the chicken or the cow grows up there for the next couple months of its life. It doesn't move, it excretes, it eats, excretes, it eats, all while standing in that one location. The temperature is controlled so that the body doesn't have to waste energy trying to heat itself up. And yeah, it's going to be the most efficient way, even if it's the most cruel way. Sustainable food production, so this is specifically in our oceans, okay, managing fish farms as well as
having nets with a certain sized hole to only catch the adult fish, so that the small ones can still survive and reproduce. Okay. Also using quotas, so preventing fishermen from overfishing the ocean. Okay, so that the fish populations can come back. Okay, so it has to be sustainable. And then finally, biotechnology. So we can genetically modify crops and animals to have larger biomasses to be more nutritious. Okay, so that possibly we have to do less, or we have to grow less to get the same amount of nutrition. Okay, because right now it's a matter of our products and our agriculture being almost watered down. You see, so vegetables and fruits aren't as nutritious as they used to be, especially fruits. Fruits have just been selectively bred to be incredibly sweet and tasty, okay, but they're not as nutritious as they used to be. Okay, same with vegetables. Okay, so my name is Cameron, and this has been Biodiversity, and I believe it's the end of biology. So I hope this has all made sense to you guys. If you need any more help, if you would like individual lessons, please reach out to us. You can find us on TikTok, find us on Instagram at Feynman Education, and I'm sure our contact details are on the YouTube page as well. Feel free to come look at the chemistry lectures that I also do, okay, as well as the physics. Okay, thank you for watching. I don't want to say like and subscribe, but if you have found this video or these videos helpful to you, yeah, leave a comment. Let me know if there's something that you would like to go over specifically, or there's something that I can improve on, or if you just like to shout out and say hi. Okay, have a good day, everybody.